All right, welcome back to the best training channel on YouTube. Today is the start of a new period where we are transitioning from the old gym into the new gym. So this is a temporary holding spot while the new gym is being finished being built. When I say we, this is not my gym. I'm just a member of this gym. Technically, it's a lifting club, so it's not an actual like gym. You have to pay your membership. Most everyone in here that trains is some sort of a weightlifter or a powerlifter, and they compete in those two aspects. So I'm one of the few people that just use this space because they have the equipment that I like. I can come train 24 hours a day whenever I need to, so it's a great spot. But this is a temporary holding spot. We are literally in a basement underneath the basketball court. So this is like the sports hall in town. So above us is like the handball, basketball court. This used to be kind of where they did their indoor golf training because Iceland obviously can't golf a lot of times outdoors. So that golf place has moved to a new indoor facility, which I'm going to be going to on Monday next week, actually. And since this space opened up, this was a good opportunity for us to kind of hop in here, get some more space so we can train while we wait for the new building to be finished being built, which should be, I don't know, a couple months or so. Today, we're back onto the clean pulls. The progression from last week is going to be pretty much the same sets and reps, but we're just going to be going with a little bit heavier on the barbell today. So we'll do that 2 consecutive reps, drop the bar, and then do another 2 consecutive reps. And I think I'm gonna be about 160 today on these clean pulls. I think I was around 150 last week. So this week we'll go about 160, maybe 165. 3 sets on that real quick, and then we're gonna move on to the strength portion of today, which is gonna be some back squats with some deep seated box jump variations. All right, next up, 165. We're gonna go 165. And we'll do 3 sets of that. So I'm gonna knock out 2 more, take about 2-minute, 3-minute break in between that. And if you're someone who's following along on the subscription program, these blocks are really there just to kind of minimize the amount of times you got to pick up that bar off the ground. So it's much easier, like on the low back and the legs, to just kind of have to lift it up from an elevated surface versus going all the way down to the ground. So try to minimize the amount of fatigue, the amount of times you're picking that bar up off the ground. So using risers or using blocks is a great way to achieve that. But make sure that the block is low enough so when you get into that low hang position, so somewhere around the knee, that barbell is not going to touch the blocks and kind of throw you off. So make sure it's low, get down to that position, explode up, use those blocks to drop it on there, reset, and then you have a shorter range to pull that bar up before you get into your next set. All right, next up for today is back squats, seated box jumps. Last week I did a pause on the back squat. I'm gonna try to maintain that this week as well. So I'll do 3 reps on the squat. I'll come here to this seated position, and then from this position here, I'm gonna be exploding up onto the box. Now, I get a lot of questions about seated box jumps, specifically the starting height on where you should be sitting when doing a seated box jump. I don't think it matters a whole lot when it comes to the specific depth. What you're trying to do is mimic something similar to the loaded movement that you're doing. So if you're doing a deep range of motion back squat, being in deep hip flexion, deep knee flexion when doing a jump is going to be important to try to match. It doesn't need to be the exact. I don't need to be from my low position trying to explode from here. But if you're doing like a high box squat, trying to do like a high seated box jump would pair very nicely with that. The most important thing is whatever depth you choose to be at for your seated box jump, you should be able to explode off of the box from that position. So you don't want to get into a position where you're not able to produce force at a high rate, where you then have to kind of preload and get yourself into a position where you can produce force. And what that looks like is, let's say I don't have the ability to rapidly produce force from this deep range of motion right here. What you often see people do is they're going to kind of rock forward, pick up their hips, and then they're going to initiate their jump from this position, because now they're in a position where they can produce that force very rapidly. What that means is I'm not actually doing a low seated box jump. I'm doing pretty much a 90-degree seated box jump. So raise that box up to where you can feel like you're exploding and your hips are leaving the box as fast as possible. So the difference between the two would be, this is what it looks like being able to explode off of the box. And this would be an example of somebody who needs to kind of preload into a stronger position before they can initiate that force. You'll see them kind of rock forward. So you'll see the hips rise up a little bit, then they kind of load up the legs and explode from that position. Film yourself while you're doing your seated box jumps. If you see that happening, raise the box up until that little bit of a preload is starting to go away, and then start your box jumps from there. As you get more comfortable and you have more experience expressing force from that specific joint angle, you can start dropping that box down a little bit more, as long as it's still paired up really nicely with whatever movement that you're doing, and try to start being able to produce force from different joint angles. And that's how you should choose what depth you should be on your starting position on that seated box jump. All right, I got 160 on the bar. So 3 pause reps, 3 seated box jumps. I'm gonna take the microphone off while I do these seated box jumps so it doesn't hit me in the face. All right, ceiling height might be a problem in here. We'll figure out some variations. That felt good though. Compared to last week, when I was doing these pause reps, if you guys remember the last video I did with the box jumps and the squats and the cleans, by the time I got to my 3rd set on the squats, my legs were fried already. Adductors were blowing up. It felt like I was already sore from doing the squat session. As I was warming up, getting up to 160, they feel tremendously better today. So just kind of like what I expected, last week was a struggle. A lot of people who were on the program in the forum dropped messages about how sore their legs were, about how sore their upper body was. That's expected to happen. This first training block is going to be about 4 weeks long. A lot of it is accumulation based, specifically on the sprint side. So we're doing a lot of volume on the accelerations. So our 2 sprint days a week is a ton of work. The weight room stuff is not like your traditional accumulation where we're not doing high amounts of repetitions per set. So we're not doing 6, 8, 10, things like in the Unit 2.0 program, where there's gonna be a lot of volume at the beginning of that program. This accumulation is we're just gonna be trying to add working sets for the first few weeks as we go through this. So last week I had 4 written down. I ended up doing 3. I'm gonna do at least 4 sets today. Next week, probably go to about 5 sets on this as we're increasing load. So that accumulation is going to be in the amount of work compared to what we did over the first week. So you'll see X amount of volume in terms of week 1. That's going to be slightly higher this week. Week 2, week 3, that's going to even go up another. And then week 4, we'll take a deload before we go into more of an intensification block, which is going to be focusing on trying to build up the load and focus more on the strength aspect on a lot of these movements. So rather than doing 5 sets of 3, we're probably going to stick with that 4 set range, working on more traditional strength numbers. Might even put these into a cluster where rather than doing sets of 3, we might go 2-1 for a week. We might go 1-1-1 for a week after that, and then just hit some heavier doubles and heavier triples. Who knows? I'm kind of building it out as we go based on what the Ohio State program is going to be. So that's kind of the thought process behind this. Accumulation in terms of more work done week 2 than in week 1, and then week 3 compared to week 2. And then the accumulation side on the track is just getting a lot of work in and accumulating a lot of meters in total for all the sprints that we're doing. I got a couple more sets of this, and then we're gonna move on to that elevated RDL variation that I did last week as well. All right, this is gonna be the last set. This is set number 4. I think 4 is gonna be good compared to last week's 3 sets. Still feels good. My legs don't feel anywhere near as terrible as they did on set 3 last week with, I think I had 140. So the legs are coming back quickly, which is what I expected to happen. I feel like it's only gonna take me probably 3 to 4 weeks to really get back some of my back squat strength that I had previously. Whew. All right, there you have it. So I'm gonna knock out some deficit RDLs and do some ISOs, but I think that's gonna be a good spot to end today's video. I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.